We're continuing our Compact Tractors Buyer's Guide today with a discussion of tires and ballast. May not seem too exciting, and if you're a first-time tractor buyer, you probably didn't think about either one of these things, but we're going to show it's important. Let's get started. Got to thank one of our viewers, Projects with Pat, for coming up with this idea. He suggested that we dedicate an entire episode to this, and I agree. So our first 4 episodes have been the engine horsepower and the frame size in the first 2. I kind of had to take 2 separate episodes for that. The next one was on PTOs. A lot of confusion in the PTO. Episode number 4 was on some features and options, and we also got to discuss with a dealer just about the availability issues, supply issues facing us this year. We might hit that again in some later episodes. We'll see how it goes. We're also still talking about taking some questions in a live episode. Haven't done that yet, but we're still planning to do that. I'll let you know in more detail on that soon. Today's episode, we're going to talk about tires. I get a little confused with the way they describe the tires. They have the R series. They call them the R1s, the R2s, the R3s, the R4s, and then they go in all directions from there. Well, the R1s are considered an ag tire, right? You've all seen the ag tire tread. There's an additional R1 variation called the R1W, which is 20% deeper tread even than the R1s. The R1s themselves already have deeper tread than anything you see here. R1s clean out really well. They're great at the mud cleaning out of them. They get great grip. But they have some negatives for our type of tractors, and so that's why you don't see a lot of them. The R2 tires, I bet some of you didn't even know they existed. They are double the tread depth of an R1. Usually in the rice paddies or places where you've really got to deal with deep mud. We used them on combines in years past when we had mud, and you would dig down maybe a foot or even deeper and keep right on going if you had enough horsepower. And so incredibly great traction with an R2 or a rice tire. Now, on my right here is an R4. Yeah. And then on my left is an R3. So you can make no sense. So you have aggressive in R1, you have very aggressive in R2, then you have the least aggressive, and then you have industrial. I can't make any sense of it either, but let's dig in and figure out which one's right for you. Most recently, we've started seeing hybrid tires, they refer to them. This is an example right here. This is a Carlisle Versaturf. It's a radial tire, and it's a hybrid between, say, an R4 tire like this and a turf tire, R3 like this. This is another example. This is the Garden Pro from Galaxy. Again, it's a radial, and it's a hybrid between, say, an R4 and a turf. There's one other hybrid model that I know of, and I actually own it, but that tractor's not here right now. Our Kubota LX3310 has the Goodyear R14T tire on it. So those are the 3 hybrid tire options that I know of. You could look at this a little bit like motor oil, I suppose. Some people say that you have to have exactly the right motor oil. If you don't have the right motor oil, your tractor is going to blow up in flames. And somebody else will say, well, motor oil is motor oil, and they don't really worry about it too much. I suppose to some degree that's true with tractor tires. You could probably get by with any of these tires for all seasons, all the time, but I think you will find a difference, especially in the extremes. So let's talk about some different conditions and see which tire is best for each condition. Let's start with, say, loader work in soil, whether it be hard soil, loose soil, doesn't really matter. In that scenario, an R1 tire would probably be best, right? You're going to get the most traction, you're going to get the most push. Same with pulling a box blade or anything that requires ground engagement, hard pulls. An R1 tire is going to be best. I would say that an R4 tire is going to be second best. The hybrid tires, third best, and the turf tires a distant fourth. This is the weak spot of a turf tire, is getting any sort of traction when doing loader type work out in the dirt. It just isn't going to get very good traction at all. Now, Let's look at the next most important, I would say, area of traction, and that would be snow. Snow is exactly the opposite. This guy's going to get the best traction in snow. Okay, the point there is that it's got the most rubber hitting the ground at any one point. And I don't really understand why that's the case, but it is. This guy's going to get the best traction. These hybrids are going to get the second best traction. The R4s will get the third best, and the R1s, again, a distant fourth. In fact, both the R4s and the R1s are considered not good at all on snow and ice. I don't have an enormous amount of experience there. I'm taking some of this from what I read. My experience, though, with the hybrid tires has been very positive in what snow conditions we have. Take a break here. Do you notice the noise in the background? Do you hear a tractor in the background? You may or you may not. This would take us back to episode 1. We have our 5075E is in a regen cycle right now. Just as I went to put it back into the shed, it decided it needed to regen. I could have stopped it, but I don't like doing that. When they want to regen, they get to regen in my book. So yeah, refer to episode 1 if you want to understand that more, but that's what Johnny Five's doing. And if you get up next to it, it's hot and it smells. You can tell the smell that it's in that regen cycle, burning off that DPF, that diesel particulate filter. One more condition we should talk about these tires, and that's turf itself. If you're using a tractor to mow on turf, which tire do you want? That should be obvious, the one that's named turf. Sure enough, that's going to be the best on any turf conditions. The second best are going to be the hybrids. The third are the R4s, and the worst are the R1s. Everything's relative here, right? There's no question the turf is the best, but are you going to see damage with any of the other options? My dad, for years, has used the four-wheel drive 3320 with R1 tires to mow his yard. And he had no problem at all. He said, I don't see any issue. There's no issue at all. Well, some people are going to see an issue just by the divots put into the yard. That's going to be a bother to some people, and that R1 tire will definitely do that. Other people are not going to care unless the tire tears up the grass and kills the grass. And if you handle an R1 tire carefully enough, you can avoid that in most mowing conditions. You won't see it just totally rip up the turf. Now, if you're careless, you slam on one brake at a time, and you have just several scenarios like that, yes, you can be pretty rough on your grass with an R1. But if you're careful, you can be okay. If you're going to be turf only with your tractor, I might ask, do you really even need a compact tractor? Is that even the best option for you? That's not helping you, is it? But in my experience so far, one of these hybrid tires is what I would suggest if you're going to be doing any mowing with your tractor. Let's talk about one more characteristic of these tires. I'm going to refer to it as toughness. You're going to find that the R1 and the R4 are going to be the toughest two tires that you can choose from. Toughness would be, to me, resistance of thorns, maybe load carrying ability typically, and just general toughness. These tires are going to be the best. I think you'll find the hybrids to be in third place and the turfs to be the least tough. So you get in a thorny area, you're most likely going to get a puncture in a turf tire. Maybe this is somewhat subjective, and maybe it's not even true, but that's been my experience, and I'd like to hear your experiences below. When we talk about the hybrids, we often talk about radial versus bias. You won't see radial versions of the turf or the R4. You won't see that very often at all, but the hybrids, a lot of them are radials. The Galaxy Garden Pros, the VersaTurfs. The Goodyear R14T is offered both ways. I highly prefer the radial. With the radial, I can run with less air, and that allows a little squishier feel, so it rides better. It also allows the footprint of the tire to touch the ground a little bit better. And since it's a radial, it doesn't then cup up in the middle. So it's got a characteristic that allows it to have a little bit bigger footprint even with the same size tire. That'll give you more traction. It'll give you less compaction. overall it's just a much better approach in my opinion. So tread pattern was what I was talking about a minute ago when I was talking about which one's going to get the best traction in each scenario, but all things being equal, a radial is going to do a lot better than a bias ply tire. It's also going to ride smoother. Time for the opinion section on tires. My first choice by far is the hybrid radial. Now you're only going to have one hybrid choice if you're choosing a new tractor. I don't see any of the brands offering different hybrids, say a bias and a radial, or a Carlisle and a Galaxy. They're offering only one hybrid choice. If you're getting a Kubota, at least the LX appears to offer the radials. If you're getting a Coyote, which does the Goodyears with the R14s, make sure they're radials. I'm not sure if they are or not. Again, you may not have much choice. That may be the option you have available to you. But the Deere, both of these are radial tires. Now they're significant upcharge, but I think they're worth it. That was a pretty soft opinion section. I don't think I'll get any flames for that. Okay, let's shift to ballast. Why do you need ballast? And what does ballast mean? Well, ballast is weight. And the reason you need it, there's really four reasons. One is stability. Your tractor can get tipsy. Another is safety. You can have a load that will throw you and turn you over. Sort of related to the stability there, isn't it? Another is that it makes your tractor more powerful. Yeah, it doesn't give it more horsepower, no. But it allows you to get that horsepower to the ground such that you can get better traction, right? And you'll be able to pull more. You won't find yourself slipping, and you'll be able to push harder, you'll be able to pull more. That's reason number three. The fourth reason is it rides better. Because that tractor is held to the ground, when you bounce over little bumps, you won't find that hopping up that you feel sometimes, especially on a subcompact tractor. If you're driving in your yard or somewhere, you'll sometimes just feel it hop. Well, adding an extra bit of ballast will help that and kind of hold the tractor down better. I'm going to talk about two major types of ballast. That's ballast that you put on the axle and ballast that you put on the 3-point. Axle ballast. There's really two types of it. One is fluid in the tires. I can illustrate here, well, I don't know, you'll only be able to tell by seeing me grunt, I guess. This particular tire doesn't have any fluid in it, right? It's a turf tire. You typically wouldn't need it for your yard. And sometimes you wouldn't even want it for your yard, right? If it's wet and you want to be as lightweight as you possibly can. In fact, that's about the only time I want my tractor to be lightweight. This one has rim guard in it. And I can get it off the ground, and you can hear it splash. Rim guard's 11 pounds per gallon, and it won't freeze. And it's out of sight, out of mind. That's my favorite part of using tire fluid. It doesn't take up any space. Yeah, it's heavy to pick up, but how many times do you need to pick up your tires? Not very often, right? So this is good axle ballast that's out of sight and out of mind. Now, are there advantages to axle ballast in general? And I would say there are. Axle ballast is not going to put strain on your axle. Anything that you put on the tractor is going to make your axle heavier, but in this case, this weight is transferred directly to the ground, right? So any weight in the tire or on the tire, as we'll talk about in a minute, is going to be directed to the ground and is not going to put extra strain on the axle. Now let's talk about wheel weights. This is the style that comes with the 2032R and 2038R. They're stackable. I've got two of them here. They weigh 27 kilograms each. How much is that? Oh, come on, calculate it for me in the comments section below. The advantages of these is they can be removed. Say if you wanted to be thorough enough, you could take them off to mow your lawn, put them back on when you're going to be doing loader work. I'm not going to do that. But you might take them off seasonally, like during the wet season of the lawn, perhaps. One of the disadvantages of these is their price. They are expensive. They're more expensive than just the price of the cast steel. They're quite expensive, I think mainly because they're designed per tractor, and most people are going to buy them from the manufacturer, so they can probably do a pretty good markup on them. I think that's what's going on here. I think these look nice. I like these. But yeah, they're expensive. Again, they're on the axle, and that makes it so that They won't cause strain on the tractor, but they will help you make your tractor more productive, ride better. Okay, I put all that emphasis on axle weights. You'd say, well, why do we need 3-point weights? Well, we do. We have to have both types of weights to be fully where we need to be with these little compact tractors. One reason is they are just so light. They need all the weight they can get. The second reason is that 3-point hitch ballast is required because any ballast that's on the rear axle doesn't fully offset what's on the loader. Axle ballast will keep the rear end of the tractor down, but it doesn't relieve any stress from the front axle. If we'll add 3-point ballast way on the back of the tractor here, we can take some weight off of that front axle. So when you load a big load into your bucket, the 3-point ballast will offset that and will relieve some of that stress on the front axle. And axle ballast just can't do that because of the physics of where it's located. These little tractors have got to have 3-point ballast. So let's talk about some different styles. The first style is just simply using your attachment. You might use your box blade. It's pretty heavy and most of the weight is on the back. It's pretty good. What I don't like about using an attachment is that it is so big. And a lot of times you have trouble getting into a tight spot because your attachment's so big. Then when you're doing loader work, front, back, it's so easy to hit something. Some folks use a rotary cutter. That to me would be the extreme. I mean, it's way back there, and when you swing, it swings a long way. I've also seen folks use, say, a landscape rake. Well, that's just not heavy enough, right? Landscape rakes are not built for weight. They're built sort of to be lightweight so that they don't dig in too much. It's just not going to be enough weight back there. One good option if you have to use an attachment is a backhoe. Maybe that's a way you can justify to your wife you can get a backhoe. You say, well, I need rear ballast anyway, so I'll go ahead and, yeah, I don't know if that'll work or not, but it kind of worked on my wife.
Yep.
Now, there are some attachments like this one that are specifically made to be rear ballast, right? So this is a heavy hitch. It's a little hard to see the bracket itself. You can see a little of it along here, but it's got 2 weight brackets, one here and one more on the front. You can see a weight on the front there, as well as I've got 8 70-pounders on the back. Heavyhitch.com, of course, you can use coupon code TTWT for 5% off. This is multifunctional. This part right here is a cart. So that's not used for actual work when you're working it. That's used for storage. And I really enjoy the cart. To me, that finishes the whole system. It allows me to roll it around the shop and just makes handling the extra weights very handy. You can use these weights. There's 70-pounders. We've got 42-pounders. I've got 3 of them on the front. You can put up to 8 of those. And the 42s work really well on the front of the tractor as well. This thing's versatile. 2-inch receiver. It's got a hook under there. There's several other attachments for it, like a landscape rake and a blade that work great on a subcompact tractor. I really like this system. It is a system because you can reuse the weights, you can reuse the brackets, there's several ways it can be used. On a less expensive front, you can get a ballast box. It's about this size. Comes back further and it goes a little lower. It goes probably about as low as this one does. Of course, the cart is not a part of this when you're actually using it. And that's one negative, is that it can drag the ground when you're loading your trailer. It can drag the ground when you're crossing ditches. I'm just not sure that, well, I gave my ballast box away. You should get one if you can't afford anything else, because it is smaller than a rear attachment. But if you can afford a heavy hitch, it is much nicer. And I just say that from years and years of experience. How much rear ballast do you need? The Deere manual is very aggressive, or maybe I should say conservative. I don't know which way you would say it. They recommend an enormous amount of rear ballast. They say wheel weights and rim guard or other calcium or something in the tires. Don't use calcium, please. Use rim guard. And still an enormous amount of 3-point hitch ballast. That's for a 1 series. And it gets even bigger. By the time you get up to the 5075E, they want over 3,000 pounds on the 3-point hitch. It's an amazing amount they recommend. How much do you actually need? Well, almost as much as they say, to be honest. I hate to say that, but your tractor is not going to be useful if you don't have rear 3-point ballast. I've heard so many people say, these tractors won't do anything, they won't lift anything. And then when I dig in a little bit, I find what they mean is as soon as they put something in the bucket, the rear end comes off the ground. The first thing they say is the tractor's useless, it won't do anything. It makes no sense to me because it's easily solved, right? Get you some weights for the rear end, it will transform the tractor. And it'll be safer at the same time. Yep, I've already drifted into the opinion section, haven't I? And that's where I am. Don't run without ballast, period. I don't care what it is. It can be a block of concrete. You've got to have rear ballast. I hope you guys have found this useful. I don't want to get too carried away on this ballast stuff, but I am very passionate about it. You've got to have ballast. Oh, I just said that. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time on Tractor Time with Tim. And as for you, brothers and sisters, never tire of doing what is good.